Hey, it's the Fort Worth Playboy. Welcome and good to the Fort Worth Playboys morning show. Yeah, it's Monday. It's taken me a second to catch up, and I literally have been like waiting around to get this thing started at 7 a.m. And then I turned around and it was like 2 minutes till, and I wasn't ready. So that's how things happen sometimes. You just, you know, your schedule's thrown off, and you all of a sudden turn around and you're like already running late. But I'm glad you guys are here. And what we're going to do on this broadcast is, like I try to convey, in the red pill and in game and in the men's right, in the entire umbrella that the red pill covers, game is part of it. And we let other people deal with like the debates and the philosophy and the larger strategic pictures. Um, and we kind of focus in, and when I say we, I mean me and Bunny, we focus in on the tactics of game, pickup, relationships, and sex. And so that way, when you come to our timeline or our YouTube channel, you'll get actionable information that you can actually apply that day and will improve your game, pickup, relationships, and sex life. Those are the types of things that we try to convey to you. But you can only go so deep on most subjects on Twitter through the written word. It's somewhat superficial. You only get part of the answer. And even on our podcast, we go a little bit deeper, but sometimes you have to hear things multiple times for it to actually kind of like sink in, or you have to have multiple examples of a principle for it to actually like click with you. And we know that just through personal development and business development, that game is no different. That you have to hear the principles multiple times for it to really sink in and stick, and then you internalize it and becomes automatic. And let me share my screen, and I'll get to the maxim of the day, which is through Chateau Artiste, of course. And this is a classic, is maxim number 3, which gives you an idea of how important it is. It was one of the first ones he put down. Bank first, befriend later. And you probably know this today as sex first, relationship later, maybe. So that's how you usually see it written anymore, is sex first, relationship later, maybe, if she earns it. And that's what this one is bank first, befriend later. Again, sex always comes first. Guys make the mistake of thinking I'll be her friend and then we'll bang. And that puts the emphasis on the wrong part. And like Bunny always kind of like tries to convey, sex is what differentiates your relationship with a girl. Like, it's what makes a date, that it can end in sex, as opposed to like going out with your sister and meeting her for dinner, because that's not a date. That's just meeting up with your sister. But if you're doing a meetup that could end in sex, it's a date. So sex is what makes the difference. And that's why when you lead with sex, and again, this also helps you mentally when you meet with a girl and you do meet up with her for the first time. Intent. There's never going to be any doubt in her mind that you're there to meet up for sex, or to move in more of a romantic relationship than we're just friends. Because that's one thing that a lot of guys, they try to like hedge their bets, so they're not fully intentional and they don't really put themselves out there. And then the girl thinks that the guy just met up, he just wants to be friends, because girls will lie to themselves and fool themselves in the moment, because she can't take action. A girl is passive. So you have to take action. You have to make the sex happen. And then if you want to get to know her more later down the road, that's up to you. Again, sex first, relationship later, maybe. And that's how that's how relationships work. Relationships that work in our world is the guy runs a show, she comes along passively, and he decides down the road how things play out. Does he stick around? And another thing that I think is a good phrase to kind of keep in mind is guys take care of the sex, girls take care of the relationship. Girls take care of relationship business. Let her go, hey, what are we? Hey, where's this going? That sort of thing. Let her decide, when she's ready to go, because a lot of times guys will like push that and it forces girls away. But in this instance, maxim number 3, there's like 200 maxims, and I try to put one up every morning. And I've been doing that for a few years on the timeline. And I've worked through all 200 a few times. So I've done this at least a couple of years. But bang first, befriend later. Again, you lead with sex, and then everything else can develop from there. But it doesn't start as friends first. That's when you see girls say friends first, it's beta bait. It's like if the guy folds, he goes, okay, she knows she has no interest whatsoever in having sex with this man. So just know that it's beta bait. Beta bait is any type of beta behavior that girls say they like when actually they find it extremely offensive and disheartening. So 317.51 says whose cast or whose cost is it? You have to explain what you mean, my man. I don't understand what you mean by that question. You have to kind of expand on a little bit. One thing you need to wrap your head around, if you do, like, a lot of guys come here, I'd say 70% at least get into game. They just want a girlfriend. And then 20% want to run a rotation, at some point, and maybe 10% are like hardcore lifetime bachelors, or definitely like day gamers, a very small percentage, the smaller. But most dudes just want a girlfriend. And most guys that will run a rotation will run one for a little while. And I mean like a year or 2 or 3, and then have a girlfriend and then get married, or, because life is long. And so most players go through they go through cycles, and life is long. And so you may go through each cycle 2 or 3 times in your lifetime. Girls don't mind having casual sex with you as long as you don't throw it in her face. And that's one thing, is if you want to run a rotation and you want to have 2 or 3 or 4 girls that are fuck buddies and friends with benefits or girlfriend candidates, and you are having casual sex with them, you can't use the word fuck buddy or friends with benefits. It's a bad idea, and it just tends to repel girls. You have to kind of play along. You have to give them plausible deniability. And so that's one of the keys, is you can't just put it in their face that you're having sex with them without commitment. You're the fun guy, and you guys have fun together. And that's about as far as I would go with it. And that's one thing you have to keep in mind, is you don't rub their noses in it, because it'll turn them off and they won't continue with you, because it kind of identifies you as a dude that just doesn't get it. And that's all girls want, is a guy that gets it. Let's see. Hang on. I have so much trouble multitasking. How to explain to a girl that asks for a relationship that you want a girlfriend but don't want marriage, kids, or living together. I'm still willing to provide, though. Chris, this is a good question. How to explain to a girl that asks for a relationship that you want a girlfriend but don't want marriage, kids, or living together. I'm still willing to provide them. That's how I'd explain it to her. And Bunny and I just did one question and answer the other day where the guy, she said, I want to move in. And he just said no. And so she kind of like thought he probably doesn't want to ever like move in. And when the guy he said no, but he didn't really explain himself. He meant no, I don't think it's a good time right now. But she was already gone. She had already assumed the worst and said, this guy never wants me to live together or move forward, so I'm out of here. And so she walked. if you explain something like this, you have to kind of give the nuances, and it's important to do so. That way she understands the entire picture. You're more than fine being in an exclusive relationship, or however you may, whatever your parameters are, but you don't want marriage or children or living together. And if it's for a certain amount of time till you're like, I don't want to do any of this till I'm 30, or if I don't want to do any of this ever, that's fine, but that needs to be explained to her, especially if she's in, her 20s, early 30s, when she's in that childbearing range. It's unfair to keep a girl off the market if she's looking to have a marriage and kids, but it's not your thing. You've got to cut them loose and let them go do their thing, and they can be replaced. And there are girls that are not that interested in marriage and kids. There's not a lot of them. But you have to cut girls loose that are looking for marriage and children if that's not your thing. But yeah, just be real upfront with her, and let her know what your limits are, and then she can make her decision from there. And that's the best you can do. But that is one thing that it's kind of strange. We always think of his game as like being this unprincipled thing where we just kind of like every man for himself and everybody's out for themselves. But it's one of those understood rules, is that girls that are in that childbearing range, you don't drag them along if you're not a babies and barbecue family kind of guy. If you're never going to do that, it's unfair to drag a girl that's her ideal lifestyle and what she wants. You can cut her loose and she can find somebody to replace you with, and you can find 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 girls that'll go along with your plan, or girls that are not ready to have kids and they're still looking to have fun per se. And then that's your role as the fun guy. And speaking of, if you want that role as a fun guy, we always say, and we haven't said it enough lately, alcohol is sex fuel. Women are now binge drinking more than men for the first time in history. And we always try to convey that, if you're going to set up a first date, no dinners ever. It's a bad idea unless you know what you're doing already. And the players that do dinner have been doing it for a long time. They know exactly what works for them. But with alcohol as sex fuel, it allows you to, most people drink in the evening. Most people drink in like a lounge or a club or a bar. So it allows you to, meet up later in the evening, which the later in the evening you meet up, the higher the chance of sex happening the first night. That's just the way the numbers work. And you want to be in a good environment that you can kind of get to know each other. And again, a club or a lounge, whatever venue you choose that has alcohol, that's why we always say, if you're just meeting up with a girl to kind of feel her out and see if you guys click, meet up for a drink is always one of the best ways, if you're a drinker, to do this, because it's a small investment. You can go to the same place. You can find a regular place. You can get used to the environment. You can become comfortable, and that gives you that home field advantage. But alcohol, it helps people relax, not too much, and it gives people plausible deniability. And that's the bottom line. Again, just like we say in basic training 1 and 2, at the end of the day, though, you are responsible for yourself. And when she's with you for how much she's drinking, like, you can't put a drunk girl in a car and send her home. It's just bad form. So you have to kind of monitor the intake. And the second or third thing that I would mention is, like, a lot of girls that are like over 35 will be wary, always kind of watch your own intake the first, second night, because every girl over 35 has dated, had a family member, a girlfriend's boyfriend, or they've had some kind of contact with alcoholics, because there's so many dudes are hard drinkers. And so if you show up completely fucking sloshed to the date, it usually isn't going to go well. And then she's going to have the story of the guy that showed up too fucked up to have a date, and you're it. So alcohol is sex fuel, but it has to be used responsibly. I guess that's where they come with the commercials. But you are in charge, and that way, you kind of like set up the venue, make sure she doesn't like overindulge, and then you go for them. And gonna tell her, yeah, this is live, man. It's 7 a.m. here in Texas. So wherever you may be, I'm not sure what time it is, but that's the real deal when it comes to sex fuel. And if you do want to increase your close rate, a drink helps. It doesn't have to be 10. You can have 1 or 2 drinks. It just takes that edge off. And a lot of times it just gives some people clarity. And I've even seen like where guys, they kind of like slow down because guys will talk too fast. And then it just doesn't go well because they're too keyed up, too wired up. And girls, again, always less is more. You want to slow things down. Use fewer words, slow your movements down, set back, let her come to you. Never pass up sex with a new prospect unless you thinking you can circle back later. Guys, girls physically change extremely fast. Girls get pregnant. They can gain 30 pounds in 3 months, 50 pounds in 3 months, break up with a boyfriend, have a mental breakdown, pierce their face, get 10 tattoos, shave their head. In a year, she'll be practically unfuckable. Strike while the iron is hot. Any guy that has ran through a lot of girls over time can tell you the story of the one they go, well, I just kind of like thought I can come back. We always clicked. We had good chemistry. And I had this other girl that I was kind of seeing, so I just kind of focused in. And then when I circled back in a year, because this girl fell off, the girl had gained like 50 pounds. And it happens all the time. You can just know this as you move through your 20s, 30s, 40s, the looks just go. Very rarely does a girl look better down the road. Generally, it's, and it's not even if they take care of themselves, it can be an event like COVID knocked out even the most hardcore girls that took care of themselves, knocked them down for a while because they weren't able to do the normal maintenance that they normally do. And they were hearing all this bullshit like, let your hair go gray, or, they didn't, see their normal people that helps them with their appearance, and everything went to shit as they were also gaining 30 pounds in 3 months. So that's one of those things when you have the opportunity, you need to take it. Again, she might end up with a boyfriend. The ultimate cock blocker is like her meeting some dude, getting married, and then you never see her again. So you need to, if you're, intent on having as much sex and experience as you can in one lifetime, when it's right, you need to pull the trigger. And if you kind of have to, everything's lining up, you need to push and show up, because that's how things happen. But if you don't, you're going to lose 1 or 2 like this. And then you're going to be like, you literally think about it for years later. Because it's funny, because I put out a question like, where have you seen a beautiful woman out of place? Like I saw this stunner working at IHOP years ago, but I still remember it. It's really crazy. I mean, how do you know? And you can ask almost any man where he saw the most beautiful woman he's ever seen out of place, like working at a gas station, and he can tell you. And the same thing, is guys, especially lifetime players, can tell you the 2 or 3 girls that got away, or they got away in this sense that they like weren't who they were when they met them, and they kind of like went bad, or ended up with a boyfriend, when I got back there. Because timing is such an important thing. And that may be the biggest lesson from this, is timing is so important, that when your timing does line up with a girl, you need to take advantage of it. And you're doing her a disservice by passing it up too, because you're a good thing. You're a lot of fun. And if she doesn't get to enjoy you, it's a loss for her too. You're kind of doing a service and for other people, and you're obligated as a player to kind of show up. So you kind of have to look at it that way too. You know, these gifts you have, you're supposed to put them out there. And so don't leave her short. It's something that she will miss in her lifetime. So again, don't let them get past you, because they will change. And girls change way faster than dudes. At least from my, maybe girls have a story. I should run this by Bunny. If guys like change rapidly and then all of a sudden they're not the same guy that they were. So one thing another major life lesson that we try to convey to guys is girls, like, she's new in town. There's a reason. Kind of like in the military. I was in the military for a few years, and every female I met that enlisted was running from somebody. She was running from her stepdad, her uncle, her husband, her ex-boyfriends, something she was running from. Whatever situation it was at home, she was running from. And from my understanding, is like LA and New York are no different than the military. Girls move there to escape wherever they're at. And then sometimes they have to move from LA or New York to escape their reputation that they've built there. But if a girl fucks up her reputation big enough, gets crazy, arrested during a breakup, fucks every guy in town, destroys her reputation with alcohol, drugs, sex parties, she will move to a completely new city, get a fresh start, and to meet a new guy who will never know about her fuck ups. And one guy said, hey, this isn't 30 years ago. Everything is forever on the internet. You underestimate or overestimate the inquisitiveness of most men. Most men either willingly or wittingly or unwittingly don't want to know. They don't want to know her body count. They don't want to know that she's had 3 last names. They don't know. They don't care. They're just happy that, she shows up, she has sex with him, she minimizes the drama, and he can drink, get high, and do his hobbies. That's what most men do. They don't even put a whole lot of thought in this. And girls know that. They know that they can completely fuck up and physically move to a new city and start over with a completely clean slate. Nobody's doing background checks, especially if she's attractive. They're even more like, okay, so you need to just know that. We are the minority. We're the exception. We actually, a girl says, she spent 6 months in Tulum. She spent 6 months in Costa Rica, and she spent a year backpacking through Europe. She slept with 100 men. But most guys go, oh, man, I always wanted to travel. Because that's what they know. They have no idea that travel to a girl means random sex. So that's the real deal, is when a girl fucks up her reputation, she can get a clean slate by moving to a new city. And that's where and know this too, women don't move unless there's a guy involved. They're either moving away from a guy or guys to get away from, or to a guy. I don't know how many times I've asked clients, like, what brought you here? And they'll say, well, I moved to be with my boyfriend, but we broke up. So they're from somewhere else. They moved here to be with a guy or with their boyfriend, and then they broke up. So now they're here. So there's always a man involved, always. So just know that. And you don't have to believe the initial story you hear, because they'll end up telling you the truth down the line. And all these are like mug shots because the girls fucked up so big time. They ended up arrested for something. And then we'll close out with, this will bruise some vaginas. Anytime you talk about money with dudes, you think dudes are messed up or got strange ideas about women. Add in money and you get all kinds of weird idea. It messes with them so much. So this will bruise some vaginas. Nearly every problem can be solved with money or more money. It provides stability, certainty, and options. Lack of money will cause and compound your problems, making them unsolvable. You'll need more money than you think, and you'll always be able to use more. And this is when masculine theory asked what men should know about starting a family. And that's what my advice is. And it's played out over the years. I've never come across any problem that couldn't be solved by having money or more money. I mean, I had cancer twice and money solved it twice. And if I hadn't had money, it would have made it unsolvable or, much more severe. So, including life-threatening disease, money can solve that. So just know, and every kid is going to need money, and more. Every wife is going to need money, and more money than you think. It just works out that way. And the more money you make, the more you're going to need. It's a strange thing that the bills just grow. So just know that it's you. No matter how much you have, you'll always be able to use more, and it's just the fact of life. But it really throws a lot of men off. And some men are more, they can live on less, but even then, more money would give them a buffer, a protective buffer. One of the questions is, I'm on vacation. Any advice for running game in places? You know what, vacation game? That's something that, well, one, it doesn't change. I mean, if you can approach. The best thing, and I think why guys do well on vacation, is there's no one knows. No one knows. And it's good for the girls because they're more open. They know nobody's around that knows them. They can run up to your room, have casual sex, and be back downstairs, and no one needs to know. That's what you have to use as your advantage. Be a little bit more bold than you would be at home because nobody knows you. You're not going to be back there, and you don't even have to use your real name. I mean, there used to be like a commercial where everybody would always introduce themselves as some character on TV, like, hey, I'm Norm, so that's what you need to do. There's no real change. You just don't get overly drunk on the beach. That's how people drown and end up with third-degree sunburns. But be bold. And girls know you're there to have fun, and they're there to have fun. So I think you'll have more luck, and you'll be like, shit, did I get better looking? Because girls are more receptive when they're on vacation too. And you're kind of like showing up, giving them what they want, because girls will say, I like going on vacation because, I can hook up without worrying about it. Nobody knows this guy's not going to stalk me at home, and he's not going to, tell my friends or my boyfriend. So you're at an advantage. You're in other than college, that may be the best place to meet women is when you're on vacation. And then when you say we have to be the person in front of the room, the leader, in order to attract women, what kind of instances can you do this that you have hobbies that don't particularly require leadership? I think we're mixing two things up here. Hobbies, like if you're an artist, just doing the art is it. Let's say you paint or do sculpture. That itself sets you apart, especially if you like lift weights and you go hard at your job and you also do painting. It's that contrast, but you're more interesting than the dude that just basically drinks out of a gallon jug of water and spends 23 hours a day in the gym. It's just more interesting, but you don't have to be the leader or at the front of the room. It helps to be at the front of the room. Let me put it that way. It propels you up to the front, but you don't have to necessarily lead the show. Hobbies or things that are interesting about you can be done on your own. You don't have to actually go to the front, but some things just lend itself to that. Or even if let's say you're a cyclist, but you teach like a bicycle mechanic class, you get to the front of the room. or if you've taken a serious trip and you actually do a presentation on that trip, and that puts you at the front of the room. And when mostly you just like to backpack, so anytime you're an instructor or you can take lead or an expert role in whatever your pursuits are, that will help move you to the front of the room. But just your pursuit alone, I mean, rock climbing, guitar, any musical instrument, skateboarding, it doesn't matter. Anything that you're doing, because most guys, this is the thing, this is the key, is that most guys don't do anything. They go to work, they play video games, and they watch sports. And that's it. So the fact that you do anything outside of that puts you in the top 10%. I know it, to you, it's just kind of like the weightlifting thing or the fitness thing. Less than 1% of the U.S. population exercises regularly. And people are like, it says 20%? Is this right? It's not. We know that. I'm in the fitness business. We do all of our number projections when we look at building a facility on less than 1% of the population actually using it. And then sometimes they're still overbuilt. So we think, if you're in our little world here, you think everybody exercises, when the fact is no one exercises. The fact that you exercise makes you an outlier. If you go to the mall, you go to the airport, you go to a pro sports game and look around, you're the only person that's not overweight. I mean, you're talking like 90% obesity rate here in the U.S. Nobody wants to say that, but they'll go, I don't believe you. I go, well, do you believe your own eyes? Go to the airport, look around. Everybody's overweight except for me and you. And so that's how you have to look at it. Anything you're doing as a hobby or a pursuit sets you apart, and you don't always have to go to the front of the room. But that's the bottom line. Guys, I've ran out of time. I will be back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. If you have questions, be sure to put them in the box tomorrow morning, but I will also look at what we have in here and try to answer some of these tomorrow morning and get ahead of it. But I appreciate you guys being here, and I hope I've delivered some value, get you in the right headspace for the day. And I hope you guys have a good one. Thank you for your time, and I will talk to you tomorrow.